But I'd like to turn our attention to opening the hearing on Senate Bill 113. Adam, can you give us a briefing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 113 provides that individuals who have been found to have been operating a motor vehicle at a speed of 100 miles an hour or more or 35 miles an hour over the posted speed limit would qualify under the crime of reckless driving. The bill expands the current definition of reckless driving to include individuals operating such vehicle at 100 miles an hour or more, or 35 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, with the exception that authorized vehicles would still be able to operate in such fashion. And this would be without regard to any culpable mental state. So intent is taken out of the element of the crime, meaning that the crime itself is the action. Current reckless driving is limited to operating a vehicle in a willful or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property, so the expansion of what currently exists under law. Under Section 1, individuals who are found guilty of operating a vehicle at a speed of 100 miles an hour or more, or 35 miles an hour above the posted speed limit, would not have such driving privileges revoked solely for that, for a violation of that. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions. Senator Clamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. More of a curiosity question. So over 100 miles an hour is there's a automatic penalty as a result of that, reckless driving. In the event that there's a driver taking someone with a heart attack or something that's happening from a medical standpoint, and you may have this question quite a bit, it may be for the conferees here in a moment, but do we have any carve-out, or should there be a carve-out, or what is the opinion of that? And you might not be the right one to answer that, so go ahead.
Under law, I'm not aware of any carve-out. KHP might be able to provide more insight, but there would be no emergency clause that I'm aware of under law.
Committee, further questions?
Yeah, just to layer on, is there a discretionary from an officer perspective? Because at that moment in time, there might be something that needs to, trying to get somewhere to save a life, but I'm not advocating for that. I was just more curious.
That's probably more of an enforcement under the currently how it's drafted. There is not, but that would be more of an enforcement question than
Committee, further questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. First up, we have Captain Travis Phillips. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to drive here from western Kansas, where I've been working for the last 31 years. I currently hold the position of captain. Been in the field my entire career, and this bill is, I have a lot of passion for it, and you might see that come out just a little bit as I give the testimony. So the Kansas Highway Patrol appreciates the opportunity to provide written testimony supporting Senate Bill 113, and we respectfully request the committee to consider our agency's concurrence. Quite frankly, we need your help. Senate Bill 113 would amend the definitions of reckless driving, KS 8-1566, to add provisions that address excessive speeding, because reckless driving is so broadly defined in the statute currently, it is often difficult for law enforcement to determine when exactly a driver's speed alone constitutes reckless driving. This bill clarifies that reckless driving would occur not only when a person operates a vehicle with willful and wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property, but also when a person operates a vehicle, one, at a speed of 100 miles per hour or more, or two, a speed of 35 miles per hour or more over the maximum posted speed limit. Senate Bill 113 would not change the current misdemeanor penalties for reckless driving, which are the first conviction being $25 to $500 fine and or 5 to 90 days in imprisonment. And I might add that that is set by the courts, not by law enforcement. The second would be the second subsequent conviction would be $50 to $500 fine and or 10 days to 6 months imprisonment. However, the bill would exempt the individual from revocation of their driver's license under the KS 8-254 if the conviction was a result of speeding alone. Drivers who exceed the maximum posted speed limit endanger the lives and the lives of other motorists. Speeding presents a significant potential for losing vehicular control, particularly on wet or icy roads like you drove in on today. Speeding reduces the effectiveness of the occupant protection equipment, such as seat belts and airbags, which also reduce the effectiveness of roadway safety measures, such as guardrails and medium barriers. When one's speed doubles, the necessary stopping distance quadruples, making every increase in speed an exponentially more dangerous act. Speeding increases the degree of the crash severity. As more force comes into the crash equation, there's a greater likelihood of injury or death. Speeding also puts the lives of our law enforcement personnel in peril, as they must oftentimes exceed the speed of the violator to initiate a traffic stop. This magnitude alone is very passionate to me, because the troopers in Troop D, let me just say that of the speeders going over 100 miles an hour that are cited in Kansas, 1,100 of them were cited last year, and just in Troop D in the 6 counties that we supervise. And 1,100 times a trooper had to drive well over 100 miles per hour to stop and cite somebody going over 100 miles an hour. That's just physics. According to the last published data for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in 2022, the speed was a factor in 29% of traffic fatalities nationwide. In 2023, the Kansas Department of Transportation reported 4,354 speed-related crashes, with an estimated cost of motorists of over $1.7 billion. In this same year, 80 motorists lost their lives in speed-related fatality crashes, and 2,100 motorists were injured in speed-related crashes. So on the next page, I believe everybody has a pack, is that correct? All right, on the next page, there's gonna be a graph, and this graph is very important because this is one of the main reasons why we're pushing so hard to pass a bill to help us deal with the excessive speed that we're seeing. As you can see on the graph, the KHB has observed a significant increase in citations issued to drivers traveling over 100 miles per hour or more since 2019. That year, 1,700 citations were issued for triple-digit speeds, and in 2024, the Highway Patrol issued over 2,600 citations. The motorists traveling over 100 miles per hour or more in 2024 accounted for 66, let me back up. In 2024, 66% of the citations issued by Highway Patrol were for speed. Citations for traveling over 100 miles per hour comprised about 5% of that. To personalize that again, we wrote over 1,100 people in Troop D just in 2024 in the 6 counties, and that accounted for about 11% of all the tickets that we wrote in Troop D. And we wrote nearly 6,000 tickets. The data is clear. The number of drivers operating their vehicles in Kansas at excessive high speeds has dramatically increased since 2019. Speeding, especially when traveling 100 miles per hour or more, or 35 miles per hour over the maximum posted speed limit, is immensely dangerous and contributes to many fatalities and injury crashes in our states. No matter the statistics, any speed-related death is unacceptable. By including the operation of a vehicle at 100 miles per hour or more, or 35 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, in the definition of reckless driving, our agency believes that Senate Bill 113 will deter the dangerous behavior of excessive speeding. We sincerely thank the members here today on the committee for considering our testimony and urge you desperately to help us support this bill. On the next few pages, you'll see some current fines for speed. I'm telling you, currently, if you're going 100 miles an hour in Kansas, by the time you add in court cost, it's $258. And when we write somebody from out of state, which I will tell you, that 70% of the tickets written in the state of Kansas for people going over 100 are to out-of-staters. And when we stop people, where I'm at, is predominantly people are coming from the West. And when they see the fine, they don't get too shook up about it. It's $258. So what we're needing to make an impression on the people that come through Kansas, not to endanger our constituents and not to travel at over 100 miles per hour. And I think this bill is probably the least invasive of any change that I've seen in the last 4 years. I know in 2022, they made some changes to the reckless driving and tried to push that through the House. Then I think the next step, they worked on increasing the fines in 23. Last year, they talked about doing some license suspensioning, which think it would be quite laborsome to do all that. And so this year, I really like the feel of this bill. I think it's very enforceable. And to your question, Senator Klemp, that you had earlier, officer discretion. That's probably the biggest tool that we have when we put this badge on, is common sense and officer discretion. And there's 3 levels of it. It's the officers first, then the prosecutor, then the judge. And what I like about this bill is the reckless driving statute is a misdemeanor. The fine is set by the court, and so the courts can use their discretion also. There's a lot of statistics that I won't bore you through reading through. If you have any questions about the statistics, I'd be more than happy to explain them to you. I would like to draw your attention to a page that has the Kansas map. It's green, and it has some red on it. So this Kansas map represents the top counties in Kansas where high speeds were written in the last 4 years. And as you can see, Troop D constitutes 18 counties in northwest Kansas, and the 6 counties that are red and orange, that is the area that I'm responsible for. And that's why this bill is very passionate to me, and it's going to take more than just a highway patrol to make it happen, and that's why I'm very excited to stand before you all and humbly ask for your assistance. I would entertain any questions from the chamber at this time, if you have questions.
Any questions? Senator Klemp?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for your 31 years of service, Captain. So appreciate it. And the passion is appreciated. So a couple quick questions. Most of your folks seem to be between the ages of 18 and 23.
Medium is 27 years old, and they're males. They're the most common violator.
This says you can't pull a license without a secondary offense. How often on all of those stops is there a secondary offense or a second offense?
There's a percentage in the stats in here. I know that that there was. Take me just a little bit to look it up here.
And then the second layered on the question, I see the red and the orange that you talk about in the map. Do you feel like the energy around the excessive speed is trying to be, all the officers in all the different areas have the same level of energy you do to stop speeding at these high rates?
Yeah, I take my job very serious, and my job is to save lives. Yeah. And I wish everybody just drive the speed limit. The very first fatality accident I worked on the Kansas Highway Patrol was a 2-door sports car that was going around the corner at milepost 7 or milepost 9. And I know it's milepost 9 because as they rolled their car, milepost 9 slapped the top of that car and was perfectly imprinted, the 9 on top of their car. And 2 fatalities resulted in that. And we estimated their speed at the time at 105 miles an hour. And so from that point on, I knew that I don't want to see another dead person because they're speeding too fast. I could tell you many, many stories. Some of them you probably don't even want to hear about speeders that have ended people's lives. And unfortunately, they don't just end their own lives sometimes, they end the lives of others. And there's a family that I was very close to there, my neighbors, that ended 3 generations in one speed fatality. So,
thank you. And
thank you. Answer all your questions, sir? Okay.
Senator Clays?
Yes, sir.
Senator Cleese?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Captain, for your testimony today. I don't think these fines are high enough, in my opinion. I think some of the committee here knows how speeding affected our lives. My wife's dad was killed by a driver who was going the same direction on 281 South at a high rate of speed while that individual was on their cell phone. Hit him in the back when he was on his motorcycle, killed him instantly. And so that's a whole nother bill we've talked about in the past. But my question is, when we changed the speeding fines here, I think it was, you mentioned 2023. So will the speeding fine over 100 that we upped, would be like multiple fines, and that would stay in play, plus then this would be counted as reckless, and then this one would have an additional fine, or would they piggyback? How does that work? Just
So the way that works is speeding is a traffic infraction. And so that in itself is a violation of state statute. And I'll give you an example. I stopped a gentleman that was going 121 miles an hour on Christmas Day, this last December, and he actually passed me and kept on going, because when you're going 121, your tunnel vision's pretty tight, and he didn't notice all my cop stuff on my car, I guess. So I stopped him, and he was speeding. And in my opinion, the way he was driving, weaving in and out of traffic, right, he was also reckless, right? So there's two violations there. And so now, with the help of this bill passing, now he doesn't even have to be weaving in and out of traffic, because I bet if you Googled, is it safe to drive 100 miles an hour right now, it would tell you that it's dangerous, right? If you'd ask any of your constituents in Northwest Kansas that I work around that want me to do something about this, they would tell you it's dangerous. And where I live, we have a lot of bedroom communities that utilize the interstate to drive back and forth to work. And they're very upset about the people that pass them going over 100 miles an hour. So the nice thing about this bill is there's two violations, but there's officer discretion. You know, not every officer is going to write both the statutes, even though after this bill passes, you can. And then not every officer is going to arrest somebody for reckless driving. You don't have to arrest, it's officer discretion. You can issue them a ticket, and now you got the infraction of the speed, and now because you're inherently, pro se, going over 100 miles an hour, which is inherently dangerous, now you got a reckless driving charge also. You set them a court date, because misdemeanors have court dates, and you allow the courts to decide what their fine is. Does that answer your question, sir?
I believe so. So they have the opportunity to have two separate fines, basically.
Yes, it would be included together, two separate violations. Yeah. Yes, sir. That's correct. Thank you.
Two violations. Well, okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. Is it
Yes.
piggyback, or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Committee, further questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to seeing the progress of this bill. Thank you.
Next up, Catherine Magana. Welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Catherine Magana, and I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Kansas Department of Transportation, and I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 113. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and provide comments. KDOT is in support of this bill as it relates to safety on our roadways. We know that speeding puts the lives of everyone on Kansas roadways at risk, including not only our KDOT workforce and law enforcement and other first responders, but those that are just driving on the road hoping to get to their destination safely. One thing I'd like to mention is that we know that traveling at higher speeds increases risk and also decreases drivers' reaction times, which increases the likelihood of a vehicle crash. We know that if we're driving, we assume that other cars around us are going the posted speed or close to it. And if they're not, and they're going, say, 30 miles over that speed, it changes our ability to judge gaps. It changes our reaction time, thinking that a car might be going one speed when in fact they're going much faster. And we know that that ends up increasing the likelihood of crashes that can have deadly results. KDOT is always striving to improve the safety and quality of life for the traveling public, and this bill, changing the definition of reckless driving to include driving over 100 miles an hour or going over 35 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, would increase safety on our roadways. These additional penalties are meant to hold offenders accountable and also to serve as an extra deterrent for going at these dangerous speeds. We know that the Drive to Zero Coalition is focused on reducing death and injuries, and this bill would follow two of the main focus areas, including safer speeds and safer people. I won't touch on what law enforcement has already covered, but we know that law enforcement can identify excessive speeding crashes as aggressive driving, careless or reckless driving, exceeded speed limit, or too fast for conditions. And on that testimony, there is a chart on the second page. Our 2023 crash data identifies 123 fatal crashes attributed to speeding in just 1 year. In that same year of 2023, speeding resulted in 449 suspected serious injury crashes and 602 people seriously injured. Seeing these statistics and experiencing them can be life-altering. Our crash data from the 4 years of 2019 to 2023 shows that 689 people died and nearly 2,500 people were seriously injured in speeding-attributed crashes. This bill would create another tool to help curb this dangerous and risky behavior by holding drivers accountable from what we are seeing on our roadways. Speeding at these increasingly dangerous speeds, again, puts the driver at risk, but also passengers in their car and passengers in other cars on the road. We don't want to endanger any more lives, and we hope that this bill can increase safety and help save lives. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on SB 113, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next up, we have Ed Klump. Welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Ed Klump, I'm here today representing the Kansas Sheriff's Association, Kansas Association Chiefs of Police, Kansas Peace Officers. And it's my pleasure to be here today and talk to you about this very important bill. Give you a little bit of history first. When I was a sergeant on the police department here, I spent several of my years working in the traffic unit, supervising our accident investigation units. And during that time, I actually helped create our first accident reconstruction unit. So I have quite a bit of experience in serious accidents. And I'm going to tell you about a few of them as we talk here. I'm going to focus primarily on this 35 miles an hour over the limit and tell you how important that is. I want you to think about that a minute. 35 miles an hour over the limit. So let's take downtown Topeka, Kansas Avenue, speed limit's 20. You'd have to be doing 55 miles an hour down Kansas Avenue for this to kick in. School zone, you'd have to be doing 55 miles an hour through a school zone before this reckless would kick in. 30 mile an hour residential area, 65 miles an hour before this would kick in. 40 mile an hour feeder route, 75 miles an hour before this would kick in. These are very serious speeding factors. And so that part of it is very important, just as important as the 100 mile an hour issue is. I listed on my testimony, you'll see that indentated part down towards the bottom of page 1 and over on page 2, 3 news reports from last year out of Wichita. One of them was a vehicle exceeding 100 miles an hour at Rock Road in Kellogg, and that accident occurred on Rock Road, not on Kellogg. Was clocked at 106 miles an hour before the crash. Another one was a motorcycle, and there's something unique in this I want you to point out to you. Motorcycle, this was on Kellogg, traveling at a high rate of speed, and a vehicle changed lanes, and he ran into the back of that vehicle. And this is one of the hazards you have when you have a significant difference in speeds of vehicles. You're going down the road, you look in your mirror, that lane's clear, and you change lanes, and then boom, you get hit because you didn't realize that guy was going that fast. And that's how a lot of these accidents happen. And then the third one on the back there was one that was clocked at 140 miles an hour on radar just prior to the accident and hit 2 cars. I want to tell you about experience that I had, two experiences here in Topeka. 25th and Adams, a vehicle that was doing 97 or 98 miles an hour, I forget the exact figure now, hit a car with 2 women in it, young women, and their 4 children. One of them was set to get married, and they were going to look at bridal gowns. And all 6 of them in the car were killed when this car hit them. This was a horrible, horrible accident. Threw all of them out of the car. This was before the days of seat belts that were really used consistently. Horrible, horrible accident. I worked another one. It was a 1-car accident, high-speed accident on Seward Avenue up in our Oakland area. And this was a car with 4 teenagers in it. And they lost control of their vehicle because of the speed they were going. I don't know the exact speed, but it was well over 70 miles an hour, I'm sure. And one of them was partially ejected out of the vehicle. And unfortunately, her shoulders and head were in between the car and the tree they hit. And of course, killed her instantly. So these accidents happen on a regular basis in our cities, in the lower speed limit areas of our counties. And I think that's a very important component of this bill, and would urge you to, like the captain said, we need your help. We need your help to get this under control, and we'd appreciate that. I'll stand for questions.
Committee questions for Mr. Klump? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ed, for coming today and speaking on this, and all the speakers. I had a lot of questions, but Senator Klemp stole most of them from me, and so he's very I'm channeling him, or he's channeling me today. But I did share the one with regarding one of the many that he asked regarding if someone's in an emergency situation. And, it dawned on me when you were talking and you made those examples, because I really appreciate them. My daughter has severe asthma, and I actually just took her to the regular doctor. And when the regular doctor saw her, she says, you need to get her to the hospital now, or I need to call an ambulance because she's going to fail. And I just stood there and like, fail? What does that even mean? Like, I was just dumbfounded, but I did speed to take her to the hospital. But I didn't go for 35 over the speed limit in town, because obviously I don't want to get in a wreck where I put her in more danger, right? I did blast through a stop sign, but I knew it was 4-lane and I had clear visibility on both sides I could see. And honestly, as I ponder this, I would have happily paid whatever fine. It was just one of those situations. Anyway, she's safely at KU now. She's an adult and getting her master's degree. But yeah, those are scary situations, and it is what it is. That's life, and if that happens, it happens.
So, Mr. Chair, if you allow it, I'd like to maybe explain a few things about that discretion and how that works. I don't know of any officer, I suppose there's one or two out there somewhere, but I don't know any officer that's going to ticket somebody in that situation. I stopped a lady one time speeding. Her child was choking, laying in the front seat. I went around, got the child out, and he coughed up a penny when I turned him upside down and started hammering his back like you're supposed to do. I on the other side of the coin, I stopped a car for speeding one time. Walk up there's a boy about 9 or 10 years old in the right front seat, holding his stomach, groaning. This is on 10th Street. They were headed in the direction of Stormont Vale Hospital. She said, he's sick. I don't know what's wrong with him. I said, okay, slow down, be safe, and take him to the hospital. So I happened to see her pull into the emergency room at the hospital, and I thought, something just didn't seem right about that story. So I pulled off and I watched. And about 1.5 to 2 minutes later, she drives out of the emergency room and starts down the street again. And it was all just an act to get out of a speeding ticket. I had not ticketed her. I didn't ticket her again, but I did stop her and let her know that I knew. And advised her I didn't think that was a very good parental act to do that. But I never did ticket her. Also in discretion, there's 3 places where discretion can kick in. The first one is the officer. Not very many people are going to get a ticket in that situation. But the next one is the prosecutor. The prosecutor always has the right to dismiss a ticket. And then the third Captain talked about, which is the court itself. And I've seen cases get into court, not necessarily in this situation, where a judge will hear the evidence and he'll say, I'm going to find you guilty, but I'm going to pro you from your fine, and no fine, no anything. And they got a traffic ticket on their record, but not that. There's a lot of places for discretion. One thing I would caution you on about ever putting anything about an exemption into a statute is if you put an exemption in the statute and then that person's doing 100 miles an hour, taking their child to the hospital, and they lose control of their car, or they hit another car or whatever, and you have a very serious accident, couldn't do anything about it because of the exemption. So you got to be very careful about how you address that. I think those things are handled very well by our officers in discretion, and when they're not, I think they're handled very well by the prosecutors in the court.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee note, we have written testimony from Phyllis Larimore and Sean Stewart. Is there anyone else wanting to provide proponent testimony in the room? Seeing none, are there any neutrals? Are there any opponents? We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 113. Committee, I do intend on working the bill we heard yesterday on the titling of off-road vehicles soon, probably tomorrow. And those of you with page pictures, you want to be mindful of the time. It's about time to roll. With that, we are adjourned.